All right, we are at 2 minutes after, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We will be recording this session, as you may have seen. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Let me make sure we're good to go. All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today. We are going to be doing a Microsoft Copilot Chat overview and talk about how we can utilize this in a secure way and leverage all of these powerful AI tools. So my name is Larissa Cunningham. I am a learning strategist with our Evolve 365 team at Planet Technologies, and I've had the incredible opportunity of working with a number of organizations as they have gotten access to Copilot, and I'm really excited for all of the opportunities that we can hopefully inspire today with what will now be available to you. So with all of that being said, our agenda today is going to really dive into kind of what Copilot is, take a broad level, high level overview of what the intentions are and how to use AI in the best ways. And then we'll talk about how to access Copilot. We'll go into creating prompts and using the Copilot chat experience that you have. And we'll talk through some use cases. So the first place that I want to start out is just in general, we will, of course, be diving into Copilot today, but in general, with AI, it is everywhere right now. There are so many tools that we're hearing about that can help you achieve some of these things, like summarizing those lengthy documents or creating that professional and customer ready content. But at the end of the day, one of the important things to understand with a lot of these tools and these large language models is that many of these tools rely on utilizing the information you provide through that conversation to train their model so it does better in the future. So with that, that can potentially pose some risks with our personal or confidential data. So that is why it's so important to be aware of utilizing anything that's not an approved AI web service for your organization, and that might pose some additional risks there. So just something to keep in mind, but the good news is that we have a lot of those safeguards in place with Copilot. So when we're working with AI, there's two main characteristics I want to point out before we get too far into the details. And the first is that AI really wants to give us responses that will help us. And in doing so, every once in a while, it can produce really convincing but inaccurate responses. And so those errors are often due to just a lack of understanding what's happening there. So what we can do is make sure that we're going through verifying using our expertise, and it's just always important to double check anything that's generated by AI. The other element is just the pace at which AI is changing. It is rapidly evolving. We get updates and new functionalities all of the time. And today's AI is the least advanced we'll ever use. So just keep that in mind if you're running into limitations or frustrations there. It's continually evolving and changing, hopefully for the better. So when we talk about how to use Copilot Chat, it's a very different approach to a lot of the workflow that we might be used to previously. So a lot of us might have really relied on Google or another search engine where we're used to typing in those really short, concise, I want to say prompts, but those very short and concise elements to pull together what we're looking for. But Copilot Chat takes that need to break that down and allows us to have a full conversation. So we can actually derive insights and get responses like if we were talking to another person. So this gives us a lot more flexibility to integrate it into our workflow and look for things, not just explanations, not just research, but also help us start some of the creation process or brainstorming, making sure that we're allowing other perspectives in. So it can be a huge help in that regard. And it's just a very different shift from decreasing how much you're putting into your search versus adding in context so Copilot can help you more. So why is Copilot this main topic? Why is it so popular and what we're focusing on? And the first reason is that Copilot is built off of the most of those advanced AI models, GPT-4, and as images are able to be produced in your environment, DALL-E 3. But without getting too technical with all of it, just knowing that that is a huge part of how this is constructed. So you're still getting those main benefits that you see in a lot of the popular services you might have heard of. The other element is that Copilot is very great about its source transparency, and it's going to, when it pulls information from different websites, or if you share a document with it, it's going to cite its sources. So it makes it very easy for us to go in and double check anything new that might be, we might not be as familiar with, or that we need to reference later. So that's a huge perk as well. There's also no knowledge cutoff, and so you don't have to worry about it pulling answers that might have stopped last year or something like that. But the last point that I want to highlight is commercial data protection. This is the biggest key for a lot of us when we're working with our work environment. We want to make sure that there isn't any proprietary data being shared or trained. And Copilot isn't going to save any of your prompts in that regard or use it to train the AI model. So you have that peace of mind when working with it, uploading any documents or anything like that. So if you're looking to follow along with us, which I saw in the chat, we do highly encourage, just so that you can start to get used to the navigation and how Copilot will actually work for you. You can go to m365copilot.com. If you have the application if you have a desktop application, it will probably redirect you to the website as well. If you're using Edge, you might see it over there in the far right corner. You might see a Copilot icon. You can access it that way, or with a mobile application as well. So I'll share some links in the chat that should hopefully help. They might have been shared already, but just to be safe, I'll add in as well the home URL that you can utilize. So again, this is supposed to work with your work account, so you should be able to sign in with those normal credentials. If you're using a personal account, you're not going to get that same enterprise data protection, so just keep that in mind. But there's no human eyes on it. So after you sign in with your work account, your data is going to be encrypted, and it's not going to be seen by any other people except for you'll see your chat history, but no one else can access it. It is also personally exclusive, so our prompts and Copilot's responses are not, again, going to be used to train anything. So you have that peace of mind. But once you log in and you sign in with your account, again, if you typed in m365copilot.com, you should see that up here. And then you should see this little green shield up near the top, and that's going to be your confirmation that you do have that enterprise data protection. So if you have any questions about that, that will confirm what environment you're in. Now, I won't spend too long on this slide because we're going to take a look at it here in just a moment. But once you get to Copilot, it really is as easy as coming down here to your text box and entering your prompt. If you're looking up information or anything, feel free to double check those sources that it's going to give you in its response. And if you need to build on that, keep the conversation going. You can ask follow-up questions. And the nice thing about it is those conversations are all going to build on your context and add more and more information the farther you get into it. So all of that being said, I'm going to come over here to a demo environment. If it looks different than yours, just keep that in mind that, it might look different for everyone. But this is what it looks like if I go directly to that M365 Copilot website. You can also go to your home page as well. That was the additional link that I added to the chat. And if you go there, you might see something like this where you can kind of go to your OneDrive or search what you have available. If you click on apps, you hopefully will see Copilot here as well. If you don't, you can try to go to all apps and see if it's available there. But if I click on this, I'm going to go ahead and skip that for now, but it might prompt you through some settings that you can set up. It took me over here as well. So you can pin that if I go back. Apologies. All right, so if you click on this setting when you're adjusting, you can pin that to the side as well. So it's easy to access. But once we get here, the first thing I'm going to point out is, of course, that green shield. If you hover over it, it will say you have enterprise data protection in this chat. We'll have a new chat button, and this will come in handy because, as I mentioned a moment ago, as you converse with Copilot, it's going to build on some assumptions from the prompts you've created and the answers it's given. And if you change topics completely, sometimes it tries to merge those topics. So hitting new chat will just give you that blank slate and you can create a whole new context of conversation. So that's what that will do here for you. And we'll do that a number of times today. But here in the center, you're going to see some different suggestions. This might look different for you. It often changes when I refresh, but these are just some ideas and prompts to get you started. So if I were to click on this first one, it is going to have me upload some files for it, but it pulls that prompt together for me and I didn't have to type much of anything. Same thing here, right? So these are going to give you some different ideas to get started. Feel free to adjust those prompts as you go. But that's a great place to start if you haven't had a chance to just start those conversations. Now, if you're still looking for ideas, right above the prompt text box, you should see this little icon that says View Prompts. If I click on that, it's going to open up my Copilot prompt gallery. And this is where I can actually start to filter down and see so many more of the prompts Microsoft has pre-built for us and that we might need to tweak just a little bit. So here you can actually filter this by the type of task you're trying to do. So if you're trying to create brand new content, you might want to filter it by that. But if you're just researching, asking questions, you could filter it that way as well. You can also filter on the job type. So if there's a role here that fits what you're trying to do, try looking through those and again, use it for inspiration if nothing else. Now, when you go through these, if you find any that are especially helpful, since there are quite a few, notice that when I hover over one of these prompts, you'll see the option to either copy the prompt link or save that prompt. When you save it, it's essentially going to put it in another area so that you can quickly access it and you don't have to search as hard for it next time. So I hit that little ribbon icon, and now at the very top, if I come over to your prompts, that will take me to any prompts that I've saved. And we'll do this here later as well, but you can actually save prompts you've created. So if you have a prompt you think you'll use more than just the one time, feel free to save that and use it moving forward. You can also go see a much broader prompt gallery as well, but just for the sake of focusing here in this experience, I'll leave that to your exploration. So now down here at the text box, we can type prompts that don't reference anything at all, but we do have the option of adding files. So if I click on this little paperclip, it's going to open up my file explorer and I can pull in documents, PDFs, Word files, etc., and have Copilot reason over them, analyze them, give me feedback, anything like that. We also have the option for dictating to Copilot, and this might be an easier way than typing them out. Just depending on what works best for you, you can speak or type it out. So when you come into Copilot, there's a couple other things to know, and I did mention you do have a chat history here. So if you don't see that right away, up at the very top where that shield is, you should see this little rectangle with an arrow. That's going to be where your chat history lives. So your chat history is going to be here. It'll tell you, I had these prompts earlier today. I can expand beyond that and kind of jump back into a previous conversation I was having without having to recreate the whole context. So sometimes there are large projects that I'm working on that I can complete one or two things today, and then I get new context and information the next day, and I can come back in and jump right into that conversation again. So if I click into any of these, I'll see my whole history, my prompts, and the responses here. So just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and hit new chat. And if you can follow along, I encourage you to do so. But I'm going to try just a very simple prompt here. And let's just see if we can find some surprising facts about your hometown. And hopefully you're more familiar, so maybe you'll know these. But I'm going to pick a different area this time. But let's go ahead and let's list 3 surprising facts about Dallas, Texas. That's where I previously lived. So, okay, and just like that, I'm getting some fun information. So here's some 3 surprising facts. It looks like there's a frozen margarita machine, which I did not know. There's some information about German chocolate cake, and it's the home of 7-Eleven. So I didn't know that. Now, if you want to check any of these out, this is where those references come in. So at the end of each section, it gave me where it pulled that information from. And if I hover over it, I can see the website itself. And if I click on it, it will open the website for me. So I can do that for each of these. It looks like they were pulled from the same source. If you're doing something that's referencing quite a bit of different information, you might have a lot of those references. At the very end of your prompt, you'll see a full list of all of the references that were used in what Copilot responded with. So those are listed here as well. You get a couple other options once you start building on these. So I'm going to point out down here, I have an option to edit in Pages. This is a newer feature to the Microsoft Suite. So if I click on this, what it's going to do is take my full response that I got, and it's only going to reference the response I'm on, not the full conversation. But when I do that, it will actually open up this preview of a Microsoft page, and I can now start editing some of the responses. I can start adjusting, rearranging even. So this little 6-dot menu is going to let me move things around really easily and make those necessary adjustments. I can add a lot more in here. I even have options to share this page so someone else can come in and collaborate on it. Maybe I got the head start to a project and I need some feedback. I can share this out and manage that access as well. And notice as well that those references were pulled over. So those are still going to live in this document unless you remove them. And if you, at the end of all of this collaboration, want to turn it into a full document, you should see an option up here to open up in Word. So if I do that, it'll take just a second to render, but it's going to create a Word document for me with that information. So this is that same information. You'll notice I have reference numbers, but they're not linked anymore. It's more in that Word format. And I am still getting some of those conversational elements as well. So just keep in mind when you're copying and pasting or moving something over to a page, you might have to go in and edit some of those elements out, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So once I created this page, just so you know where it lives, because I know that can be confusing. If you're ever confused, you can click on the title it automatically generated and look at what folder that's being stored to. It should default to your OneDrive documents. Now, if I go ahead and close this, a couple other notes that I'll make about Pages is it's going to guess at a title based off of the prompt you gave it. It doesn't typically make sense, at least in the experiences I've had. So I'm going to rename this to Fun Facts about Dallas. So that will be easier for me to find in the future. It updates here. So if you've created a page in the past and you want to get back to it, how do you do so? If you're already in Copilot, you can actually come up to this 3-dot menu and look at your recent pages. If you're in the home area, you may see a tab for pages as well, but this will allow you to kind of open up those pages and jump back into them. So as we continued, if I had more questions about it, I could keep prompting it. These suggestions right above your text box are going to change based off of the context of your conversation. So Copilot's going to try to anticipate some of the additional needs you might have that may not have already been resolved. So you can easily continue that conversation based off of suggestions as well. So if I continue that conversation and I want to add it to a page to keep working on it, rather than hit edit in pages to create a new page, you can click this drop down and hit add to recent pages. And that's going to pull up any of the ones you've worked on before. So another easy way, it won't overwrite anything. It will just add it to the end of the page it has. So you can keep going from there. All right. Now, I do just want to pause really quick. Are there any questions we want to address that haven't been?
There's a couple of questions about citing references.
Yeah. Okay, so I see the question, what if the reference doesn't show up? Typically, it automatically does, but if it doesn't, I would honestly just prompt Copilot again and say, can you please cite your references and ask for those links? And it does a pretty good job in my experience of giving you those if it doesn't automatically generate them. Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and do a new chat, and I'm going to share this as well, and we're gonna try it out before moving on. But this is more of maybe you're exploring a new topic or trying to learn how to utilize a new tool that you have. So you can enter if you want, just to kind of get some quick ideas and see how it responds with you. I'm going to go ahead and use a Microsoft one. So I'm going to ask for a fun fact about Power Automate. I have used it, but for this scenario, we'll just say I haven't. And let's see. So it's excited for me. I love that. Copilot does treat me like a friend, which is neat. But here it's giving me a quick answer, telling me some things I can automate, and I could continue this conversation and get more information, steps on how to achieve certain things. If you're working with different types of code or things like that, Copilot's great at breaking some of those down, answering questions, even explaining Excel formulas, anything like that. So you can use it to better understand some of those areas. All right, so how does this actually apply? I know we did some fun ones here, but how does this actually apply for you? There's a lot of different scenarios this could come into play for, but just to name a few, you can summarize policy documents. That's a huge area where I know a lot of us have to spend some time is getting large documents and trying to pull out the overall message. So you can feed those documents, attach them, and get quick summaries and even action items or agendas and things like that from them. You can draft internal communications. We're probably going to test that here shortly, but whether it's an email communication you need to share out or a news post or anything like that, feel free to either have Copilot help start that idea or brainstorming process, or have it elevate and review the communication, ask it questions on if it's getting received in the way that you're hoping it will be. So it can give you really specific feedback on suggestions and areas you might consider changing. And beyond that, you can do things like learning assessments, brainstorm engagement. Copilot is very creative. And sometimes staring at that blank page is overwhelming and makes our brains stop. So if you're running into that, try seeing if Copilot can spur the conversation. You can have it use things like translating something into plain language, whether that's actual translating or whether you have a highly technical document you need to be understood by a different group of people. You could use it for that. Extracting action items from transcripts. This can be very beneficial if you have any meeting recordings or transcripts like that. It can help you make sure everyone had the same takeaways. Simplifying complex language, comparing options. Maybe you're creating a workshop or just in general trying to get feedback. These are all great places to start to incorporate Copilot. So just to walk through a couple of scenarios, the first one I want to talk about that may affect some of you is gathering an RFP requirement. So maybe that's the first step in a long process of tasks that you have to achieve. Feel free to ask Copilot to help you start that draft or give you feedback on the draft you've already created. Ask for those summarizing tips or ways to explain that. And then once you're happy with that and you've saved the time creating that initial document, you could move on to analyzing your procurement data, asking Copilot for feedback there, having it help you interpret patterns or even areas that might be roadblocks or things like that. You can move on to standardizing your contract templates, which would allow you to then move on to presenting those strategies to your team. And from there, maybe you need to summarize everything that you've just done for a stakeholder meeting. And then you can even have it help you write that email to get approval for everything you've implemented. So that's one area. These steps might, of course, change depending on your role, but it helps in each step of these phases in different ways. So from analyzing to creating communications, it's just being clear about how we're prompting Copilot. The example we'll take a look at today is going to similarly follow this outline, but maybe you're in charge of making some policy updates and you need help to make sure you're hitting all of the important points. You can outline that update first with Copilot, and then once you're happy with it, in that same conversation even, you can have Copilot then draft the policy language. If you need to reference an existing document or you have specific formatting you need to follow, you can add that document as well for it to reference additional context. And then from there, summarizing to your leadership, creating a frequently asked questions document so that we're setting those people impacted up for success, and all the way on to actually announcing this change and maybe doing that briefing as well. So again, these steps might differ for you specifically, but all of these tasks are slightly different and have different needs, but Copilot can be implemented into each of them. And one last one, just for inspiration, would be maybe you're responding to a public inquiry. So maybe you don't have all of the context or you need some additional clarity. You can put that inquiry into Copilot, have it feedback some general insights, or I think one example I've used a number of times is when people use acronyms that I don't necessarily understand in their context. So sometimes I feed that context to Copilot and have it clarify what all we're talking about. From there, you can draft a response that's sensitive, respectful, clear, and aligns with your organization. Then you can tailor to different audiences. Maybe this goes to a lot of different people. One thing that Copilot is really great at is helping reword and rephrase things for different tones and audiences. So definitely a place to try and potentially use the same topic and try some different tones and see how Copilot can help adjust some of that for you. From there, maybe you add support information and then review it for the clarity and tone you're looking for and create a template so that you're set up for the future, both you and your team. So let's go ahead and actually try this out and see how this works with Copilot. So I'm going to come back here to my demo space. I'm already on a new chat, but if I wasn't, I would hit that. Actually, I think I'm in the wrong. Here we go. I'm going to hit that now. So, all right. So from here, we're going to kind of embody that space where we need to write a new policy. So I'm going to say that I'm an IT administrator, and we need to implement a bring your own device policy. So I'm just going to give Copilot all of that information. Say, we're implementing this policy for our organization, and we want to allow our employees to use their personal devices for work, but we do need to ensure the data and security and compliance with company standards on eligibility, security requirements, acceptable use, support limitations, and employee responsibilities. So that was a little bit longer of a prompt than what we used earlier, but it provides more of that context for what Copilot needs to give me a successful response. So here pretty quickly, I'm already seeing some signs that look pretty good for me. It looks like it's hitting all of those key points in this outline that I was hoping for. And awesome. So it looks like it's done generating that response for me. And what I would then do as the expert, I would come in here and review this, make sure that it makes sense and aligns with everything. And again, in this instance, I likely would have wanted to add a file here so that it could see maybe our existing policies or any requirements we have there. So right now, it's a very generic element here, but it gives me that outline. Now, if for any reason you do notice that something is generally incorrect or maybe it hallucinated or something like that, you do have the option of giving feedback. And this is very important for Microsoft to keep improving the product. If it does something great, that's awesome feedback as well. But if you didn't like something, feel free to fill that out and send that back so that we're able to continue improving Copilot over time. So we're going to go ahead and say I liked this outline. Definitely would have wanted to take a little bit more time, but just for the sake of kind of moving through this process, let's now move on to actually creating some of the policy language. So I'm going to come in here and say, I like to be conversational and friendly. You don't have to be, you can be more direct, but Copilot is friendly back to you when you are. So I'm going to say thanks for the outline. Now, can you help me draft the full policy language for each section of this policy? And I want it to be formal and professional and suitable for inclusion in the employee handbook. So I'm then listing out the different areas. I might actually, at this point as well, add in another file. And I'll go ahead and actually do that. So just so it can see our other policies, I'm just going to drag and drop. That's my favorite way, although it did kind of put that in a weird spot. So I'll give that for reference and see if it helps it. You can kind of clarify what you're trying to do. Let's see here. So when you do this for the first time, you might notice this little information icon pop up. And this is just so you know what's happening. So by putting this document here, it is going to upload your document as a copy to your OneDrive. You can manage this at any time, but if you were to come over to, I'm going to quickly jump into OneDrive and just show you where this goes. If I go to My Files, you may notice a new file that says Microsoft Copilot Chat Files, and this is where all of those will go. So you can go in and clear this out. You can manage access or anything like that, but that's where your files are going in order for Copilot to analyze them. It does seem like let's go ahead and, it doesn't want to send my prompt right now. So I'm going to detach that. I think it was the way I added it at that point, but we'll go ahead and take that out. We can reference it later if we'd like to, but here it's starting to actually draft the policy itself. So again, if you have any specific requirements for this, make sure to reference that document, but it's pulling together some really nice and professional verbiage for me to implement into a policy. All right. Now, as you can see, depending on the length of what you're asking for from Copilot, it might take a little bit longer, but at least you get to see some of the progress as it happens. So you can kind of see where Copilot's at in that rendering. But again, we can go through here. Definitely want to double check anything that's generated by AI. So make sure to read through all of this. And the next step that we would do once we're done with that is I'm happy with it. Maybe I actually copy this. You can use this copy icon. Again, just make sure that you delete any of the conversational aspects. So you can copy that, add it to your document, reformat if you need to. Or if this isn't quite right, have it change something. Maybe you need this in a different format. Change that format and reprompt Copilot, and it will feed off of the context and adjust. But I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm going to continue my conversation now. And maybe this is the next day I jumped back into my history and now I need to summarize it for executive leadership review and approval. So I'm going to read through this. Sometimes some of the summaries are a little bit longer than I would like. If you have a specific length you're looking for, consider putting that in your prompt. Maybe you want 2 to 3 sentences, or maybe you want a full bulleted list like we got here. Maybe you want 2 or 3 paragraphs. If you have a specific length you're going for, that's a really helpful element to include in your initial prompt. So I'm going to say make this shorter. I was trying to decide if I wanted to add anything else, but let's just go ahead and make it shorter just to see how it condenses that. So again, pulling from that previous answer, but building on the new information I gave. So didn't shorten it quite as much as I wanted to, but I could keep going back and forth until it was the length I wanted and get more and more specific. All right, so now if we come in here, again, maybe this isn't all at once, but you can jump back into those conversations. So from here, I'm really happy with what we've created. I've sent this off to executive leadership, and now they want to move forward with making sure we have all the resources. So let's have Copilot help us create an FAQ document that should help support users through this change and adjustment. So when I send that off, of course, it's not going to have any existing questions to reference from. So this would be more of an assumed questions that would come up, but it will provide this and put it more in that question format versus let me read a policy document. So this can still be very, very helpful and hopefully jumpstart what you would need to create for anyone who would be impacted. So of course, as you get questions coming in, you could bring them back to Copilot and say, hey, here, you could give it a list of questions and have it add that to what you have down the road. So build on the progress you've already made. All right, and now that I have this document, again, I'd probably copy this over. Maybe I'd edit in Pages first and then turn it into a Word document. That would be a great workflow for getting that feedback and finalizing the view of this FAQ. But I could also just paste it directly to a SharePoint page that we might be sharing. So from here, I'm pretty happy with that. And now it's time for us to create an email announcement and actually tell people who will be impacted. So please draft an email announcement outlining these new policy changes, and please reference this document for further review or questions. Let's see how it adds this time. We'll see if I run into any issues there. All right, well, looks like we're in luck. All right, I want this to be excited but professional. So we're going to pretend this is our new policy document. It's not, but we'll pretend like it is. It has some other IT policies in there as well. But thankfully, it has the context of what we've already talked about, so it should still do a great job. All right. So when I said that this format was going to be an email, it gave me a nice subject as well. It's saying, okay, dear team. So if that's not quite right, we'd want to make adjustments, but it's bringing in some key highlights, what makes you eligible, and encourages you to actually overview the full document. Now, I would want to make sure that's linked properly when I copy and paste this over, but it did pull that in. And we can go from there. So maybe I still want to make some adjustments. I think that's a good first draft, but I realize now looking at it that I want a clear call to action for anybody who reads this. So I like what it has. I just want it to add some more. So I'm going to ask for next steps so that they have a clear what their responsibility in this change is. So again, very friendly to me. Adds that in. You could have added in things like a sign off because you'll notice that it left some of that information blank because it didn't have it. So it left some placeholders where I could go in and put in the necessary information. I'll point that out here in just a moment. All right, and while this is, well, it finished generating because I started talking about it. All right, so it pulls this together for us, tells you the next steps for you. So it might be a combination. You'll notice the first draft it gave me, I had a spot to actually put my name or position. And this one changed it a little bit. So every time you iterate and change something with some of these, just be aware of that adjustment. Even sending the same prompt multiple times will usually derive different answers from Copilot. So it is sometimes helpful to just resend the same prompt and get a refreshed view. All right. I do just want to pause here for a moment. Are there any questions that we haven't been able to address or want to showcase again? All right. Taking a quick look at the chat, it looks like we've got a lot of answers in there, but if I missed anything, please feel free to call that out. All right, so since prompting is kind of that core space of your engagement with Copilot, what makes an effective prompt? Being really specific and detailed, talking in full sentences with instructions, and adding in elements like the tone, purpose, and preferred format are all going to make a higher quality prompt. It will be much less effective if you're vague, if you only use a few words, and if you don't give any context or preferred output there. So just keep that in mind. There are some really simple prompts that can be very effective, but the more specific you're getting, the more information and context you want to provide. So there's no wrong way to prompt. It is a natural conversation in that environment. So experiment, see what works, what doesn't work. And really prompting is kind of like a muscle that you have to train and practice over and over again. So when you're practicing, these are some elements I would recommend including as you go through. So the first would be considering adding a persona that you want Copilot to take on. So do you want Copilot to assume that it's your role or position, or maybe it's an HR professional, executive leadership, or just a coach or a friend? Those are going to take very different approaches to whatever task you give it. Which then leads to the second element, which of course is the task itself. This is where you need to clearly state your expectation of what AI is supposed to accomplish. So is it answering a question or is it generating an email like we just did? Those are very different outputs that it's going to need to put together. So just being really clear about that expectation. If this isn't already clear from the task itself, make sure to specify a desired format. Sometimes my personal preference is a table. I just tend to understand information a lot faster when I'm looking at a table. And so I often prompt Copilot to give me an answer, but to give it back in a table format. You could do a bullet point list, a email, report, anything like that. And those formats and the way that it generates is going to be different. If you have an audience, which is often the case, identify that and who the target audience is. Are we talking to experts in a field that are highly technical, or are we talking to the general public or someone who's new to the team? You know, those are very different levels of complexity and verbiage that you might be using. So adding that audience as well is going to allow it to personalize even more. And lastly, again, if this isn't already included in one of your previous areas, clearly stating the tone you're looking for. So if you're looking for something really formal or professional, very polished, it's going to be different than if you're trying to write up something fun for your team and using humor. Maybe you are addressing a really sensitive topic and you want the tone to reflect that. Add all of those pieces of information in, and you're going to get a much better response on the very first try. So if you were to use all of those elements, your prompt might look something like this, where you fill in these pieces. So think like a specific persona, create a what's the task at hand, how do we want it formatted, who's it going to be read by, and what tone are we looking for. So as an example, maybe someone is a communications officer in the public health department, and they need to draft a press release that summarizes the outcomes of a recent vaccination campaign and include those key metrics and communication engagement highlights. Please use a clear and public-facing tone. So as you can tell, even just from this prompt, I am going to need to include some information. So maybe I attach those key metrics that we're looking at and those documents that would be referenced. So just in case it is overwhelming to kind of get used to utilizing AI in your workflow, I wanted to talk about a couple of key elements that are going to help your success. And the first is just keeping a growth mindset. There is no perfection when it comes to utilizing Copilot, and AI is moving so fast that it's really easy to fall behind. Even as someone who is in Copilot every single day, there are moments where I suddenly discover something else that came through. So I'm constantly learning about these changes and updates as well. So if you're ever thinking like, am I doing this right? It really is just about progress, not perfection. It's not about any space of judgment. It's just trying to help you maximize your time and find quicker ways to achieve some of those things that might be really time consuming. So if you ever have any of those ideas like, AI can't do this, well, you are still the expert in your field. You are still the driver. So Copilot is a great assistant. I've heard it compared to an overeager intern where they really want to help you, but you have to set them up for success by giving them the right information and pointing them in the right direction. You're definitely not missing the boat if you feel that way. Everyone, or I won't speak for everyone, but a lot of people feel behind just because of how quickly it's moving. And at the end of the day, while there are a lot of different tools out there, the ones that make the most difference are the ones we use. So with this being integrated into your workflow and easy to access, hopefully that elevates your workflow and the different tasks that you have on your plate. So with that, there's a couple additional things I want to showcase, but I also want to save some time here for any questions we wanted to readdress. So feel free to keep adding those and we can adjust as we need to. But I promised to show this before. So if you are looking to utilize one of your prompts multiple times, what you could do, you can do this in a brand new chat if you're writing this out for the first time, or if you know you have a good one from a previous conversation, you can jump back into that. And anytime you hover over your prompt, you'll see some options to edit the prompt itself, copy it if you want to, and you should see that same ribbon that allows you to save your prompt. So if I save this, then I can adjust the title if I want to, however makes the most sense for you. And I'll go ahead and hit save. So that will go into your prompt gallery. We'd come over to your prompts. And I even see my little icon down here saying I created this one, Microsoft created this one. So if I want to use that, it will pull in everything that I had before, and I can make the adjustments I need to. So that's a really great way to adjust. I will also say if you have a chat, maybe you have an experience like what we were showcasing earlier that you're coming back to frequently. As you look at your chat history, if you hover over it, you should see a 3-dot menu here. You can actually rename that conversation, and maybe I want it to just be clearly the BYOB project, which I don't think is the right, I think it was bring your own device. I'm so sorry. But we'll go ahead and say bring your own device project. And now I can easily identify that in what might be a very long list of my history. So that's a really easy thing to do. You can also clear this out as well by deleting individual chats. And I did receive a question at one point about how to delete your whole history. That is an option. That's something that you would need to do from your account page. So if you come up here to settings, actually, it's going to be clicking on your profile icon, and you would hit view account, and that's going to open up your account area from this space. Let's see if it will load for me. From here, you would go to your settings and privacy, and in your settings and privacy, come over to privacy at the top. There's a second tab, and you can actually make adjustments with your Copilot activity history here. So it should be here in the middle. You'd have a large delete button. I personally like to have that running history, but this is an option for you to clear all of that out. I do see a hand raised. Let's see.
Hi, Larissa. It's Jeremy Brown. I have my hand up.
Hi.
Hi. I saw in the list of chats, is there a way to pin chats to the top?
There's not at this time. That definitely might be coming, but not right now. So the easiest thing that I would do is this. I do believe it, if you go back into a chat and continue a conversation, I think it comes back up to the top. So we can actually test that right now. But as far as actually pinning it for easy access, that part, no. All right, I'm reprompting it here just to see if it will come to the top or not, but I might have lied to you there. I'm so sorry. I'm glad we tested it. We'll skip this for now. Ah, it did. Okay, so it moves back up to the top. So if you revisit a conversation and you're using it, it will at least pull that back up to a more recent history. All right. Jennifer, are there any other questions that we wanted to address?
Yeah, could you show how to save a prompt again?
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to come back into this so that we don't have to wait for it to generate. But if you go back into a conversation or you start a new one, you'll scroll up to wherever the prompt you want to save is, and you'll hover over it. You should see this little ribbon here to save a prompt. And that's when you'll get to rename it. And to find it later on, you'll come to View Prompts and go to the Your Prompts tab. All right. Any other questions? All right, I do see a question about the data references when web search is turned off. This is going to be grounded in the web. I'm wondering if you might have a license where you can switch back and forth between your toggles. And there would be a different response for that, but hopefully that clarifies some things. All right. Okay, well, I know we're coming close to the end of our time here, so thank you everyone so much for taking the time to join us today. I do still see some questions coming in through the chat, so we will try to get to those and respond to you. But if there's anything that we can do to help with training or adoption in this area, let us know. But thank you for taking the time today.